Okay, I think we're good to go for now. As people continue to trickle in, we'll acknowledge them and make room for questions and that type of stuff along the way. But I'd like to greet everybody this afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. I know you're probably coming in from another session. You're probably enjoying your time in front of the screen. We hope that this is a light and lively session, even though we're going to talk about some really deep and dark things. I'm just kidding. It'll be fun. My name is John Hannes. I am a member of Rotary International staff in the club and district support area. I'm joined by my teammate Andres here.
Hello, my name is Andrez Perez, and just like John, same position.
Same thing. And we're going to talk a little bit about what we do as a part of Rotary International staff, and then how we work together. So to begin, as we've mentioned just a couple of times now, we belong to Rotary's staff. There are about over 500 people who work out of our Evanston office, which is the headquarters location of Rotary International. And then about 200 more spread throughout the world. And to give a little example of that in just a couple of slides, we'll show you where we're located. But the intent is that there's always some staff available to work with our volunteer base, whether you're in Rotary, Rotaract, or supporting Interact or any of the other programs. We're all overseen by the General Secretary and CEO, John Hugo. It's very likely that you've seen him either present, give a speech, or lead some interviews on Rotary's Facebook channels and other social media channels. The important thing to know about him is that he is a member of both the board of directors and the trustees of the Rotary Foundation. As a non-voting member, he's really the staff representative to those entities, and then helps voice items that pass out to the rest of the Rotary world and the world at large. Another way of framing this, John Hugo is basically our boss's 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 boss, and he keeps the ship running. But he doesn't do that alone. We also have somebody at that senior management level named Michelle Berg, who is the Deputy General Secretary. And Michelle's held a lot of positions throughout the organization, so she knows the ins and the outs. She really is sort of the overseer of our staff on a day-to-day basis. What's happening behind the scenes to then hand it to the General Secretary to then talk about with the Board of Directors and the trustees. Now, I mentioned that we're found in locations all around the world. We have 7 offices that are dedicated to Rotary International and the Rotary Foundation. Our headquarters is in Evanston, where I mentioned. If you're familiar with Northwestern University, they're right down the street from our building. I do know that there are many more exciting teams out there. So maybe that wasn't the best example in a room filled with people from Iowa, but that's where it's an easy place on the map to identify. We have another staff in Brazil, another staff in Zurich over in Switzerland, India, Korea, Japan, and Australia. There is another dot that's on this screen that is in the UK, and that is our counterpart organization, which is Rotary International, Great Britain, and Ireland. It's a little bit more difficult to explain how they're different, so I think that the focus should be on how they're the same. They are Rotary clubs. They have presidents that are going through presidents-elect training right now. They have governors that have gone through training as well. You can partner with them on projects. If you wanted to learn a little bit more about how this sort of offset of Rotary International operates, they have a website, which is just rotarygbi.org, and it does a very nice job of explaining it. But from your end of things, it lines up very, very nicely. Andres and I belong to a team called Club and District Support Americas, and each one of those offices actually has CDS staff in it. We're one of the only teams that are found in every single office, including RIBI. And our team is made up of 12 people and here in the Americas, and we represent 183 districts. So everything that you see in purple is represented by the 12 of us. Cutting in a little bit closer, Andres and I work with 39 districts throughout the United States. We're going to leave some contact information for ourselves and then some other resources here in the chat in just a little bit. You also should have access to this in your President's-elect packet that was put together by Kathy Fahey and the other organizers of this event. And so a lot of what we talk about is going to have some support materials there. But for us, the 39 that we represent are kind of in like this swatch across the United States. And I actually have a map that shows this in a little bit more detail. But we work with clubs and districts found in zones 29 all the way out through zone 33, which is here on the East Coast. And the really neat thing about this as part of our team is that we get to learn what's happening quite literally across the majority of the United States. And if there's something that we find that works really well in our area here in the Midwest, it's really nice to be able to say to the East Coast, well, hey, there's some similar ideas or thoughts going on. And rather than creating a whole new system, here's what's happening out in the Midwest. We also are able to say to the rest of our teammates, hey, this is working really great in our region. Wouldn't this be great to work in Texas or Florida or California or Oklahoma? You know, the areas that we don't quite get to touch. Now, we've talked a little bit about our coverage. I'm going to turn things over to Andres, who's going to talk a little bit about what it is that we do with the region here. And we'll go through some examples in just a second as well.
Yeah, so as John said, we have 4 key things that we kind of help with. So the first one that you can see here is our policy. And when it comes to that, what we do is we look at everything within our governance documents. So that could be our Rotary Constitution, our bylaws, our code of policies. And what we have is, I would probably say, sometimes a little bit daunting. It could be a lot of language that might be a little bit dense. So while we hope that you guys are familiar with what they are and what they have in them, we don't expect you to know everything. And that's when you guys can come to us. There might be a question that you might have that is within one of these sections, but you just don't quite know where to find it or how to understand the language. We're here for you just so that way we can say, well, this is what it says, and this is how we interpret it. That way there are no miscommunications or you know, anyone feeling kind of unsure of what it really means. And then, excuse me. We also have a statement here on our, excuse me, our DEI statement. It's kind of included on there. Last year is, I think, a big opportunity where we realized that we had the language, and we kind of wanted to expand on that. So I know that Rotary International, we are working within the next couple of years to create a committee that way we have not just this language, but we can expand on that and we can share it with everyone throughout the Rotary world. That way there's something more cohesive for everyone to just utilize instead of just this statement.
And if I could add to that, the important thing to know about this committee, it's been in formation, is that it includes people whose everyday job, their expertise is focusing on diversity, on equity, and on inclusion. And it's not to say that other people aren't interested in this topic, but we really felt that it was super important to identify experts in this area so that we can give expert advice and provide expertly created materials. So you may hear that it's getting started up, but they've been extended out for a few more years, as Andres said, because it is a very important topic on all of these items that you see here.
Yeah, another thing that is included in our language there is our information on staying on brand. So that's something that our team kind of helps around with. And these sort of snippets that you see on here, we are just including 2 quick things to sort of keep in hand. There's a little bit of language that, again, can be a little bit dense to read. So we're just wanting to include what we already have. What we want to bring this up for is we are going to be working with clubs in the next couple of years. I know that last year we were working with our districts just to say we're trying to have language throughout Rotary, both visually and of course, literally, that people can put out. That way, everyone who looks at something that's put out by a club, they don't have any questions as to what this event or what this document is for. They know that it will be part of Rotary, and then there are no questions of who this is going to be connected with. Our example here is the Rotary Club of any town, but they could also be the Rotary District as well. And if you want to go to the next one, John. So the next thing that we also do is connect everyone through the resources. And that could be things that we have as far as documents, a PDF or a PowerPoint that we might have. If you have any questions that we know we have the materials for, we'll just go ahead and connect you with those materials. We might also see that you have some questions that are probably better answered through some of our Learning Center courses that we have, and we'll connect you to that as well. But there might be some things that we don't know the answers to. For example, we deal with Rotary International, not the Rotary Foundation. So that's a good example of what we will then connect you with other staff. So it doesn't have to be a thing, it can be a person as well. And that's a good little segue to connect you to the Rotary Support Center. That's actually where I started before being in this position. And we, in the support center, we had a lot of information throughout everything. And instead of, I would say, kind of just looking for everything by yourself, you can reach out to them as well for anything. They might have the answer outright. Otherwise, they can, like us, connect you to the right staff. They'll be able to triage your question and get your answer as soon as they can.
And only to embarrass him for just a second, I just want to say, like, we're very lucky to have stolen Andres away from that team. He's new to our team as of January 2020, right before the pandemic hit. So all of his onboarding has been virtual, just like this experience. And so we've just been so lucky because he comes with this font of knowledge and even approaches things that I hadn't heard of. And so our team benefits from it, and vicariously you benefit from it too. So there you go. I just wanted to make him blush on camera.
I try not to, but it happens. The next big thing, probably the more common thing for you guys, is club operations. And when it comes to that, it's just pretty much everything pertaining to a club. So if there are a group of Rotarians who want to charter a club, or some Rotarians who want to start a satellite club, you can connect with us. We can either, if everything's all filled out, we can just go ahead through the process. Or if you have any questions, you can reach out to us beforehand. That way we have everything all set up and ready to go once we do get those applications. It's not just the formation of these clubs, it can also be the name changes or the mergers of two clubs, or if we're able to, the determination letter from the IRS. That's something that we can also provide with you guys. And then the next big part is going to be all of our online tools. So the one that you guys will probably deal with more frequently is, of course, going to be Rotary Club Central. Excuse me. And this is going to be something that all club members have access to, but only the club officers and whoever they want to delegate their access to will be able to manage as far as setting goals. Everyone can sort of view the process of where you are within that goal, but just the club officers will be able to manage sort of the day-to-day updating of either the service activities or the goals themselves. Pardon. As I mentioned before, the Learning Center is also a wealth of information, and it's also something that is constantly updating. We have numerous things that are just constantly, being put up here, and it's something that you can access whenever you want. They're kind of set up like online courses a little bit, but there's no time limit. So you can say, okay, I have a question about how I should lead my club as a president, and then you can just search those keywords and take this course at your leisure, really. You might be a little bit competitive, or you might like to have the desire to show something. So we do, at the end of every course, have a little bit of a test, just so that way, if you'd like, you can go ahead and have that little certificate that says you completed this course. And I know John likes to make sure that he has perfect scores. So I do like to let him take this far and admit what he does.
I mean, I'm just not, it's not a competition, but I am really good at this. And you can come back in and retake tests. There's no failure here in the Learning Center. There are some fantastic courses, as Andres was mentioning. There's ideas in here about club leadership. Maybe you've been in here already to take a look at the President's-elect portion of the manuals or these courses. Other officers in your club also have coursework here, like a club treasurer, your foundation chair, your membership chair. In addition to this, there are courses on leveling up or out of your club. If you ever had any interest in becoming a district leader or an assistant governor, it talks a little bit about that world. It also includes some really fun courses that are created by other sources. And so some of you may have heard that we have entered into a partnership with Toastmasters International. And as a part of this partnership a couple of years ago, they designed 3 specific courses for Rotarians and Rotaractors to access for free. And so that can be found in this space if you want to learn a little bit more about putting together a speech or presentation and then how to. And then from there, you could also connect with local Toastmaster clubs to test it out in front of a group of their very kind critiques, or you can test it out in front of your own club as well. And then we also have some deeper knowledge courses or courses that might touch on subjects that are a little bit more difficult in topic. And that would be things like creating a diverse environment or an equitable environment for your club, and recognizing and addressing adult harassment. That's another course that's found here. We don't ever wish for that to be a situation that you face as a club officer, but it is a possibility. And in that field or in that vein, we wanted to make sure that you had access to materials that could help you in the moment and get yourself prepared to have those tough conversations. But it also helps you prepare to have the conversation with me and with Andres. And so if there end up being questions or you've gone through this material and you still want to wrap your mind around something, please let us know. We're happy to step in and assist. I'll move on to the next slide.
Yeah, and with that, it comes to our sort of last big online tool, and that's going to be our brand center. So here you can find a lot of our information on our Rotary's voice and our visual identity, but it's not just limited to that. We also have a lot of customizable sort of resources that you guys can use. That can be something like a member card, a brochure, and again, even some PowerPoints that you can just access. And the great thing about this is that you guys have them at your disposal. As long as you are an individual who has a My Rotary account, you can just log in, click on the brand center, and access all of these materials. And because they're already formatted with our Rotary voice, all you really have to do is just customize that this is pertaining to your club. If you want to sort of, make it feel a little bit more personable to your community, you can also change the images. So that way it's not just quote unquote generic stock individual. You can also have it, be people that are within your neighborhood. And we have also here the guidelines, and we sort of created this, I think, to graphic design experts. And I think we realized that that was something that wasn't necessarily helpful for every single individual. So that's something that we're also updating, and we're making it so that it's more approachable. That way, anyone can just go on there, edit as they will, and then there isn't all these sort of graphic design languages that you may not be familiar with. It's just easy for everyone to just go ahead and obtain these materials.
We actually have, before we go to this shameless plug, I'll do the plug and then I'll jump out and we'll start answering questions. Our team, as we mentioned, is made up of 12 people that are here in the US. We have 2 of our team members who came up with an idea of creating a podcast, because who doesn't love a podcast, listening to some fantastic voices from around the Rotary world. And so we've created this thing called All Things Rotary. and it can be found on any of your devices and any of your podcast areas. And each month we're releasing a new episode that focuses on a different topic. The first one is talking about forming new clubs and club flexibility, and it has a great guest speaker from Club and District Support. It's me. And then our second episode focuses on sort of the debate between creating an engaging environment and focusing on members who are engaged versus club attendance, and what would that look like. And then the third episode just came out, and it focuses on using Rotary Club Central, not just how to use it, but why using it is important. And we can talk a little bit about that tonight as we go through some examples here. The main thing that I like to leave with everybody with Rotary Club Central is that it really is your way of cataloging what has happened so that you can make future informed decisions. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again here and just lead us to a couple of areas on my Rotary, and hopefully this will help address some of the questions in the chat box. But if you have questions along the way, please add them there. I did see a couple come through actually while you were presenting, Andres. One of them was related to whether or not we were going to be able to provide the slide deck that we're using today. Yes. And Irene, thank you so much. PDG Irene stepped in to say that handouts, including this slide deck, were included on the NC Pets app under the handout section. And then there's like a section there for Rotary support session. So those items are found there. PDG Mike Becker also put into the chat a link directly. Hello. They put it into the chat as well as a link.
And actually, John, the slides I don't think are there. I didn't see them. So you may want to share them up there.
Well, then we'll share them out afterwards. Sure. We've got them stored up and ready for sharing with all of you. So don't you worry. They're scripted too. So you don't have to have taken a million notes on what we just talked about. It's also in there in the notes section. Another question that exists in the chat is, when does a president-elect get access to Rotary Club Central? And that's a great question. What I'll do is lead us there and then start talking about it. So if you have not approached Rotary Club Central, there are many ways in. So right now I'm logged into the landing page of my Rotary. You can tell because it'll have your club's name here. This happens to be the club that I belong to, some other information about you, and then this link that leads to our view club goals. But another pathway, and one that I think you might become a little bit more familiar with, is through this manage item on the header here. And then in club and district administration, this link to club administration leads to many functions that are going to be relevant to you as an officer. Things like finding your club invoice when they come out, even though we're going to email them to you. You can also approach it through this tool and pay the invoice online, or your treasurer can, because they'll have the same access. But then also additions to your membership, corrections to membership information, all of that information can be found here in Club Admin. But a little bit further down is a link to Rotary Club Central. And I've already got it open in another tab here. So I'm just going to move to that space. Depending on your browser settings, it'll either refresh the page you're on, open up a new tab or window that's kind of unique to each of you. For me, I have it set to go to new tabs. Now, the landing page of Rotary Club Central is going to feature information, just last 5-year trends on both gender, on membership in general, on ages, on the projects that you've reported, and then even further down, the annual fund. This information is really just an aggregate of what you're going to be able to find in the rest of the tool. And a lot of that navigation is handled here on the left-hand navigation side. If you're on a mobile device and you don't see this, you can use this little, and this is a real term that people use, hamburger, because it looks like a little hamburger, to expand or retract that field. I learned that once 8 years ago, and I will continue saying that for the rest of my life. In this section, we've had the landing page here, the dashboard. There's also the goal center, a view called global view that lets you see what kind of, actually, I'll just click on it. It lets you see worldwide what's happening as far as membership, the number of clubs that we have, and then the number of clubs that have set a goal in each of these categories. And you can use this top hand navigation here to switch to your zone, to your district overall, or to your immediate club group. The service activities, which is where we'll ask that you please record the service projects that you're doing. I could go on about this for a very long time, but there's a really good segment of that that podcast that talks about it. But essentially, Rotary for the last 35 years has done a fantastic job of identifying everything that is related to our #1 project, which has been the eradication of polio. We have so much data on vaccines, on the number of volunteers that have gone out, on the millions and millions of dollars that have been committed to this effort. What we don't have access to is language on what's happening in all of the other areas that we focus on. And so through this tool, through adding a service project, which I'll show an example of here, and filling in these fields and then coming down and tagging them using this category selector, it helps us tell our story in a different way. We can say, yes, we're committed to polio eradication, but we're also really committed to the environment and to maternal and child health. And here's some data on what we've been doing around the world. Now that sounds great for Rotary International as a parent organization. It sort of sounds selfish and greedy, and I respect that viewpoint. But our hope is that you can also gather this information. I'm going to go back out to the service activities area into your service summary and tracker here. Now, this is for the current Rotary year. It's in the middle of COVID. My own club has been doing some small things that I'm now seeing I need to tell them to please go ahead and enter it. But if I go back a year, we can see that our impact tracker is a little bit more colorful. It has more data here. And this actually helps a club, we anticipate as an organization, this could help your club tell its story. More and more organizations are becoming philanthropic. More people want to give back to their immediate community, which is great. We anticipate, or I maybe imagine, that they happen to receive lots of grant applications or requests for donations. And while we have said for years to tell your story, tug at the heartstring, make that person cry over the things that are happening in their community because of your club, we anticipate that other people have figured out that formula too. So now we're saying continue to tug at the heartstrings, tell your story, but then back it up with data. Say, look here's what we're doing in our community, and then here's our proof. We've put in over 500 hours on this one particular project. We've put in this much time and effort and money into making sure that our community is upstanding and in the status where we see it. So just something to think on. The Goal Center, I'll show an example of really quick as well, and then talk a little bit more about what the experience is like in here. There is a question in the chat about who has access and when do they get access. There are 6 positions at the club level that have the access to come in and edit goals and then work toward the achievement or make entries toward the achievement of those goals. And that is you as the president, your secretary, your treasurer, foundation chair, your membership chair, and then if you have an executive secretary, that position as well. So it's not just your responsibility as president. You could be the best cheerleader for it. I have been in your position before. It is so much nicer when you can delegate out. You have a foundation chair. Well, they help take care of the foundation giving goals. You have a membership chair, they can focus on membership and engagement, and you can coach them along the way. That said, in each of these tabs, we have a list of goals that are available to you. Now, I am in the current Rotary year view, because that's how the tool has been set up. When you log on as a president-elect right now, that's what you'll see. To move forward in time, you just use this little selector here. You, as long as you've been identified in your role as president for the 2021-2022 Rotary year, and you've created your online account with My Rotary and it's associated to your club, you will have access right now to this tool. You'll have access to come in, and actually all 6 of you will have access to edit goals. And then throughout the entirety of your term, have that same level of access. And then for 1 full year afterward, you'll have access to not only these goals, but then reports on these goals. And the hope there is that you'll be able to start your year with something on well, not paper, but collected or gathered here, that during the course of your year, you have the capability of editing your achievements. And then for the year afterward, you can help close out the year so that your successors aren't left in the dark as well about the achievements. Now, in each of these goals, you'll see that it won't let me select them. I should also, disclaimer, I'm in the live environment as one of my own club officers. So I'm going to show us all the way up to the point where I would hit save, and then I'm going to hit cancel because my own club president-elect just went through PECS, and I really want him to come in and experience this on his own and not see a whole list of goals that I've come up with without his knowing. But in this space, you would see that a lot of these are grayed out, that you can't really do anything with them. And the reason is we want you to come in and make a choice. Choose that this is actually going to be a goal for the new year. And if that is something that you want to focus on, like club membership increasing, go ahead and then select the goal by checking the box. This selection then activates the goal itself, and you can start making entries. Now, to come up with a goal, you could just sort of use your own memory. What's happening? Look around the room and say, okay, well, we have this many members that I'm aware of. We have 34 members. I think we can get to this number. And that's a fine way of approaching it. But another approach, and maybe the recommended approach, is to expand here using this link that shows you the last 5 years worth of data of what the actual amount was for your club and then what your goal was. And so here you can see that I put in a goofy number of 252 members, but over the last 5 years, we actually didn't get close to that. Our goal had been 40 members here. You can see it in pink. If the color bars are not your preferred method, the same information is found here on the right-hand side. So our goal had been 40 members for the last 5 years, and each year we kind of got close. You can see that's already been highlighted in blue for us here, that our 5-year high was 39 members. We got very close. So stepping into the new Rotary year, 252 is not a great goal. But you know what, 40 might be, because that's a lot more approachable. So that's what I would recommend to my own club here in that space. And that's true for all of the other goals here on membership, on foundation, on service, and so on. Again, I'm going to hit cancel. I'm sure I want to cancel, just so that that does not save. But you'll see that there are goals here for the annual fund, for Polio Plus, for major gifts, and so on. And there's even things in here for Interact and Youth Exchange when we're able to open that up again. Now, I say all of this because there is an annual goal that Rotary has established over the last few years. It used to be known as the Presidential Citation. A few years ago, we rebranded it and called it the Rotary Citation, because it really is everyone's shared goals, not just the president of Rotary and not just the president of a club. It's also not just the president of a club's responsibility. So it's been rebranded as the Rotary Citation. If any of you have served in an officer role before, you might remember receiving a pamphlet that was trifold. It had different categories and then goals within each category. And then you as a club were expected to achieve a certain amount per category. And that was certainly one approach to achieving the citation, but it was also a difficult way of approaching those achievements. We saw a lot of clubs get all the way up to the end and be shy by one item that was out of their control, that they could not start another Interact club or Rotaract club. So last year, well, actually this current Rotary year, but decided last year by President Holger Knack, we looked at this award and the citation and the requirements and redid the whole structure. So now there is a document that we, I believe, have provided in the app. So hopefully it's there on the Rotary Citation that says that you as a club can choose from 25 different goals. There are 25 that have been selected from each of these tabs collaboratively or collectively. And rather than saying that you have to complete 1 in the membership category, 2 in the foundation category, the new goal is to set and to achieve 13, any 13 goals from that list and then you will have earned the Rotary Citation. And that's something that your president-elect, Shikhar Mehta, has also carried forward into this upcoming Rotary year. So if you have access to that document in the app, that's great. If you don't, for some reason, if you go to rotary.org/citation, it'll lead to the same document. It'll show you what 25 have been identified, and then you just choose any 13 of them. My last little bit before I open it up to questions is that, again, the hope is that with this tool, with the number of people that have access to edit it, but then also view it, your club could stay on top of these actions. But it does get difficult. The year goes by very quickly. A lot of things pop up in very specific times of the year. My own recommendation to you is to come up with a quarterly plan. Maybe visit this tool once a quarter just to make sure that things are current, that they're up to date, that they match the experience that your club members are having. And then that way in June, there's not a big scramble to get data entered into this space. My other recommendation, and this is something that I've pushed onto my own club, is that if we have a guest speaker cancel, I usually pop up and say, hey, this is a great idea, a great time to get up on Rotary Club Central. Let's make sure that we're current. Because not only did I serve as a club president once, but I also served as a club secretary for many years. And I didn't want to do this work at the end of the year either. So if you could find ways of breaking this up a little bit, making it easier, you can go along very easily. There are a couple of questions here in the chat, so let's see if we can get those. John from St. Cloud says, can the president-elect start on their goals for 2021? And the answer is yes, you can. As soon as you've been identified in your role for the new year, you can come into this tool and start using it. Now, if you have a My Rotary account and you come to this space and you realize that you haven't been identified as the president, talk to me, talk to Andres. We can work with our data services team to make sure that you're linked up the right way. While I post this information into our chat, it should be included in those handout sessions. Irene, thank you so much. You've been posting links to these items there in the chat. The most recent one was for the citation. My recommendation is at the end of this session to click those 3 dots down in the chat area and save a copy of the chat. And that way you've got access to all of these items that are there. I'm going to pause myself because I am already tired of hearing my voice. So I'm going to open it up and see if there are other questions there. And then Andres, if you wouldn't mind helping out, taking over. Thanks.
Yeah, so is there anyone who has something at hand, just jumps out at them that we've discussed, or something that we might have just lightly touched on that you guys might have questions on?
It looks like I do have a question here. Who does the identifying of these officer roles? Is that something that's done only at the club level, or can somebody from the district level identify club officers on behalf of the club?
Got it. So we usually ask whoever's connected to the club to maintain their own information, just so that way there's not too many sort of voices saying one thing over another. There might also be a miscommunication where a district officer might believe one specific individual is the secretary, but maybe there was just an email that was read incorrectly. So we just want to make sure that everyone's on the same page, and it's easier to just have that particular individual connect with our data services if they're able to. If you guys would instead prefer connecting with John and I, we can go ahead and help out whatever way we can. And if we can't do it, then we'll reach out to our data team as well. But it's just a little bit easier if it's all kind of held together with the club and then our data team directly. It's just less questions to have.
The follow-up to that, another question has come in: should we do it through My Rotary, or can it be done through Club Runner? And actually, I'm going to stop sharing right now so we can see each other a little bit clearer. But would you mind addressing that question too? Like, can a club do it through Club Runner, or is it preferred through My Rotary?
Yeah, so I know that it's possible for clubs to use a couple different third-party vendors to include different roles or new members. We do have that access. You guys can do that. However, things do happen. Technology is great when it works, but sometimes we all know that sometimes it doesn't. And then that could be a little bit of a hassle. So what we do recommend is if you utilize something like Club Runner to report your roles, maybe check a couple days on My Rotary, just so that way there are no questions. It's also a little bit quicker to notice, okay, we thought we included this person in this role, but just 2 days have happened or have passed, and we realize that that's not showing up on My Rotary. That is a lot easier to fix than if an entire Rotary year has passed. It's just easier for everyone to sort of change the data on the back end and have the right information. So again, feel free to utilize what you're most comfortable with, but we do prefer that it's at least being reflected on My Rotary, and that you guys have some sort of secure system. That way there's no discrepancies between the two different systems.
Yeah, absolutely. Another question has come in that I'd like to take. It's from Erica, who asks, do committee meetings count toward volunteer hours, or are volunteer hours based on more on like the hands-on part of the project? In my own opinion, while you could record the planning meetings leading, and this is where I assume your question was going, you could include the planning meetings for the event, but really the intention of that impact tracker is the hands-on event itself. So if you are, I'm sorry, I could see you shaking your head. Does that match up with your question, Erica? Okay, cool. So while you could maybe even come up with a separate project line for those planning committee meetings, the project itself really try to keep self-contained to that item, because what we're looking for then is like the actual boots on the ground time. I would say though, use your best judgment. This tool was really designed for the club to make decisions, and we're just going to be happy with the data that gets entered as long as it's entered. So if you have, say, a couple of members, and this is a real, I think, possibility for people, a couple of members who might have either time commitments or problems with mobility, or just aren't able to physically take, shovel gravel for 3 hours. I include myself in that category, but they are able to spend an hour orchestrating behind the scenes and planning in that committee meeting. If you feel that that is something that is participatory or should be included in your service hours, include it. Make sure that that person is recognized for their effort as well, because that not only sends a message to that individual that their time and consideration is counted, but it also reaffirms that for the rest of your club too, who might be wondering, well, why wasn't John there? But that's a fantastic question. And I'm sorry that the answer is you get to decide yourself. But use your best judgment. I think the other interesting thing about it is you can make changes to this information throughout the entirety of your term. Now, it might be tempting, that brings up a good point. It might be tempting to go in, set a goal that you think is achievable. Say you wanted to collect $5,000 to the annual fund, knowing that in 3 years, it's going to come back to you as a club. And when everyone gets excited about grants and that timeline, you start collecting donations to the Rotary Foundation, or they're sent in to the foundation, and you realize, you've hit $6,500. People were that excited. They're super jazzed about this opportunity. It is tempting to go into the tool and update your goal to $7,000, right? Because if you could get to 65, could you get to 7? While that is a possibility, I will throw out a little bit of caution or my own preference. And this is the competitive side of me coming out. My own recommendation is to leave your goal at $4,500 or whatever it was, because it then allows you to see how far you surpass that goal. So if you set a goal of 4,500 and you achieve 6,000 halfway through the year, what a great identifier. If you, at the end of the year overall, you were able to get to the $7,000 mark when your original goal had been 4,500, that tells not only your successors, but 4 more generations of succession that something happened that year. You could identify, then we had a guest speaker come. We had Adina come from the Rotary Foundation's annual giving staff and give a very, very great presentation on this. So maybe leave some of that space for you, or leave those things alone. You can always adjust the New Year's goal or increase that goal next year to really identify a different type of activity or possible achievement. Selfishly, this also, I mean, I'm a selfish person too. This also gives you an opportunity for your district to take a look at the goals that are achieved in the district and identify areas of opportunity, but then also areas of success. And so if they see that your club had set a goal of 4,500, but you raised 6,000, that might spark some of their own interest in reaching out to your club to see what was working, what happened, what could they do to replicate this idea for other clubs in the district. This also, and I don't want to scare anybody, but this also might help identify potential assistant governors or committee chairs for the district, because if you've found some way of being successful, why not share that knowledge and that wealth? And then I'll step off my soapbox about Club Central and goal setting. So what other questions are out there if anybody has any? And it's okay if you don't have them. All right.
And I just want to thank you. What a wonderful job you did of the overall support that is available to club presidents, and also the technical support through Rotary Club Central. So thanks so much for a great job.
Oh, you bet. And I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Andres too. So thank you. With that, I know we started a little bit late. I am cautious to say, should we end a little bit early, but it does buy you back a little bit of TV time tonight. We've left our contact information in the chat. It's also available in the app. We will be sending on our slide deck to the support team for the overall event, so that way you have access to it after the fact. And then if you do have any questions along the way, we've included, again, our contact info there. I just remembered that it's also in the notes section of the PowerPoint slide deck. So it's going to be very impossible for you to not be in touch with us. With that, I want to thank you so much for your time tonight and for answering the call to becoming a club president. Whether this is your first time or your 15th time, it is such a very important and key role. It's one that I would gladly do again. I had such a fantastic time learning a little bit more about myself as a leader. I will never be club treasurer again. That was the hardest year of my life. And if you have a club treasurer that is your friend, treat them very nicely. Get them a nice gift at the end of the year. And I'll throw it over to Andres in case you have any closing thoughts as well.
No, I want to thank you guys as well. Like John said, I haven't had the opportunity to go to any events in person, but being able to see you guys in some form has been pretty great and a good way to sort of connect to everyone who's in Rotary.